Well, welcome to Pizza Quest. We're back. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, but I am talking to Chef Roy Elam, who's across the country in San Diego, California. And we're going to be talking today about Chef Roy's newest restaurant, Donna Jean, which is basically the second part of a two-pronged restaurant, maybe the beginning of a chain. Who knows where it's going to go? I'll go.
Right.
But Roy, welcome to Pizza Quest, and of course, I want to share with our viewers and listeners not only the news of the restaurant, but the unique idea behind it, because you've got a very creative plant-based themed menu, and I'm looking at some of the items that are listed, on the menu, and they get me pretty excited because I'm a big plant-based fan and fanatic. I mentioned to you in an email that I've got a local restaurant that we love called Sanctuary Bistro. I don't know
Yeah.
if you know of that one, or if you know Barry Horton, who's the chef there. But I have a feeling you guys are kindred spirits.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one, but I'm always down to try and learn about other people and see what they're doing for sure.
Well, we love it. And one of the things we love the most there, and I noticed you have something similar on your menu, is he's got something that he calls fried oysters, which are
Yeah.
basically fried oyster mushrooms. And you've got something called hot shrooms on your
Yeah.
menu. Is it similar idea?
Yeah, ours is based off of Nashville hot chicken. So
Uh,
we just go that route with it. Bread the oyster mushrooms and have our own little secret spice mix and do the whole thing. Yeah.
well, it's amazing how those oyster mushrooms work. They
Yeah.
like mushrooms. I mean, like oysters. They have the texture and soak up the flavors, and they're pretty addictive, I have to say.
Yeah, we got really lucky and found a local mushroom farm, I guess you would call it,
Yeah.
down in San Diego that we buy all of our mushrooms from, and they've been great. They're like super meaty, super nice. So not just oysters, we've been finding a couple other things that we can buy from them. So that's been great.
Well, let's take a step back and tell us a little bit about the evolution, not only of the restaurant, but your own journey to
Yeah.
becoming, a chef in this style.
Yeah, so it's funny. We opened Donna Jean San Diego back in 2017, and it wasn't a pizza restaurant, or pizza wasn't even on the menu at that time. I don't really know what I was doing. Just was like just like open the doors, see make some food. And my partners, we already had a pizza oven in the restaurant. I was just using it for other things, and my partner said, "Hey, let's do pizza." I said, "Okay, let me learn it," because I had actually never done it in a professional sense before. So I started looking up recipes and doing that whole thing. And it took me a little while, but got the dough dialed in and everything. So now I love it. I love making pizza. I love making handmade pasta, all that stuff. So
You have succumbed to the pizza universe here. I mean,
it's
it's
so
just taking
addictive.
over. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like I actually teach pizza classes now, and I was telling my class last night or on Monday night, I was like, it is the most difficult, simple thing I've ever had to learn.
One of our very first Pizza Quest episodes, back when we were out on the road filming at restaurants, we were at Pizzeria Mozza in LA with Nancy Silverton, and uh, uh, we had a number of people sitting around the table, and one of them was Russ Parsons, the food writer of the LA Times, who's now retired, but he was part of the little tasting panel we had. And one of the things he said was just that, pizza has become this obsession for chefs across the internet. Everyone's becoming obsessed with pizza, but
Yeah,
especially white tablecloth chefs have moved into that sector for a lot of reasons. One of which is that the challenge, but also it's very popular and very profitable compared to other menu items.
yeah. I mean, what I like about it is it's just like a blank canvas. You know, you just do nice stuff on bread. So
Yeah.
that's the way I look at it. Some of the people I look up to are people like Chris Bianco and Mark Vetri, those guys who
Right.
they just use it as like a really simple, like, don't mess with the ingredients too much, just make it really nice, keep it keep only a few toppings at a time. That's the way I like to look at it.
Well, I see you're wearing a Bianco Di Napoli cap right now, and of course they're friends. They're good friends of Pizza Quest. We love Chris Bianco. We love Rob Di Napoli, and we've had them on the show. Do you use their tomatoes on your pizzas?
I do, yeah.
I hope so. And now
I've
that I've kind of mentioned the name,
n-
I hope
no,
you're using it because
I've actually tried a couple different ones, and we're always looking for stuff that's on the West Coast, California.
yeah,
And I've been using the Biancos. We use the Stanislaus, the Alta Cucinos for a while,
yeah,
which are also really nice. But I like that the Biancos are organic and they're pretty consistent. I was actually kind of bummed. What was it like 2 years ago? There was this huge gap. So like I talked to my produce company and I bought probably like 20 cases. I was like, let me just hold on to them. And once I ran through them, then I had to move on to something else until the new crop came in. But yeah,
yeah.
I'm super stoked on the product. I really like it a lot.
Yeah, there was a time when it was hard to get enough, to keep in stock, and they didn't have the supply. When I noticed now that the Bianco di Napoli tomatoes are showing up here, even in markets like World Market has them on the shelves. And
Mm-hmm.
when my wife sees them go on the shelf, she does the same. She just buys up everything she can that she can carry back to the house because we don't know if they're going to be there again.
Well, there was a point, and I haven't had gotten this call in a little while, where they would call and say, "Hey, how many do you think you're going to use this year?" So that they kind of can plan their growing and their harvesting and everything, which I thought was pretty awesome. So they're just trying to gauge their growth and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're trying to, kind of, I mean, the brand itself is blowing up, I think, everywhere. And of course, Chris Bianco's opened a pizza restaurant in LA again, a new version of Pizzeria Bianco.
Yeah,
Have you had a chance to connect with Chris? Has he been over to see what you're doing? And have you been to see over what he's doing?
not yet. I would love to. I am so busy that I don't go
Yeah.
out to eat much. I really
Yeah.
wish I would, because I don't know if you know the brand. It's Pisana or Paisana.
Yes.
They
Yes.
just opened around the corner from us in Sherman Oaks as well, and I had their pizza once at the West Hollywood location, but I wanted to try it one now that it's over there, and I haven't had a chance yet. The last great pizza place I went to in LA was when the Roberta's opened in Culver City, because I never got to try Roberta's.
I
And
didn't know
I'm
that they had
vegan.
a place in Culver City. Wow.
Yeah, I'm vegan, so I just got the tomato pie, but I'll tell you, it's like one of the best. Like them and John and Vinny's off of Fairfax. It's one of the
Yeah.
best. I know it's just tomatoes and like tomatoes and bread, but it's man, they do it right. It's so good.
Well, if you got a great crust, then it's everything else is bonus.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of there's a really good pizza spot down in San Diego called Tribute Pizza. It's owned by this guy named Matt, and they basically just it's the whole thing is like they do tribute to everybody else. They've had Bianco and a bunch of people there, and actually, I attribute Matt to helping me learn how to do pizza properly, because when I was learning, they have a big open kitchen, right? So I just sat at the bar and just watch them work. It's like I'll figure out the dough, but like the production side of thing, I just sat there and watched them. And we don't have a wood fire oven, but it was still cool to see how many people they were using to make it all work, and just watching the stretching and the oven work and everything. It was really cool, and they were really gracious with just letting me ask questions and whatever. So it's been
I've
really
seen
nice.
their presence on Instagram,
Yeah,
tribute to all the time, and I'd love to get back out there. I'm on the East Coast. I'm looking for an excuse
yeah,
to get up to the West Coast. When I do, I'm going to have to grab you, and if I can steal you away from the restaurant for an hour or two, we'll go on
yeah, for sure.
pizza crawl. But you haven't, as you said, you didn't start with pizzas. How did you get into the kind of cooking that have you always been a plant-based guy, or did you start out doing other kinds of sort of omnivore cooking?
My first real kitchen job was at Denny's. So I was
Yeah.
a Denny's short order diner cook for
That's the
probably
best way
like
to
10
learn.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell everybody I didn't learn how to cook at Denny's. I learned how to be fast and efficient, because a lot of it was just like assembly. Their pancake batter is just like dry mix, add water, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Although I did learn how to cook eggs. And that was like a big thing. That's like a skill, but I don't think I could probably do it anymore. I've been vegan for almost 20 years. I don't think I've cooked an egg in quite some time. But
Really?
it was a good starter job. And then from there I moved on to once I left Illinois, which is kind of the area I'm from, Southern Illinois,
Okay.
and moved to Southern California. I started working at plant-based restaurants, and just never looked back. So I feel like the first vegan restaurant I worked at was when I really started to learn how to cook, because I had been cooking at home, because Midwest in the late 90s, early 2000s, there wasn't anything remotely vegan, vegetarian. Now when I go back home to see my family, they're everybody has like an Impossible Burger or something, but
Right,
and
right.
the idea of vegan isn't like this weird thing that nobody understands. They'll still look at you kind of weird, but they'll at least have something on the menu for you. But yeah, moving out to San Diego, getting at the I started working at this restaurant called Kung Food, and I
Crazy.
actually Donna Jean is actually in the space of that restaurant, the very first vegan restaurant I ever worked in. My business partner who owned that restaurant then, he split the place in half,
Uh-huh.
and then there was another Italian restaurant that took over for a while, and then when they folded, he called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this space. Do you want it?" And just remembered me from that time that I was working there. So it was kind of this weird full circle thing that worked out.
It's nice when it happens that way. What
Yeah.
about the name Donna Jean? Where did that come from?
So Donna Jean is my mom's name, so I
Oh,
named it after her. She, she grew up on a farm and was very much about cooking every meal. I can maybe only remember a handful of times that we would go out to eat. I think, and when we went out to eat, it was funny. Like Pizza Hut was like the fancy restaurant, so we would go to Pizza Hut to eat. So back when you could actually eat inside of a Pizza Hut, I still had like memories of the way the phone sounded there.
that's funny.
Yeah.
But when you have a
So
great cook at home and you have farm fresh food, it's hard to you can't get to a restaurant that's going to do any better.
no, and it was great. And we would go back to the farm in Ohio where my mom grew up. And yeah, I was there, I'd say like 4 or 5 years ago when my grandma turned 90, and they still had this, couple of little acre farm. They don't buy vegetables, they only eat what they grew. So it was really cool to go back there and see that it was still existed in that form.
Yeah. Well, so you kind of came in. You didn't go through the sort of the culinary school route. You just went in the deep end, learned how to cook on the job,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
then started applying what you learned to this now what seems to be to many people a new style of cooking. It's been around. Cooking vegan and cooking plant-based has been around, but it's picked up so much momentum. My very first restaurant, believe it or not, 50 years ago. In fact, next week I'm having the 50th anniversary reunion
Mhm.
with the co-op of people that we started this, was a plant-based restaurant in Boston, Massachusetts called Route
Wow,
One Cafe, spelled
nice.
ROOT, Route One. And we were way ahead of our time, but we thought, okay, we're a couple years ahead of the trend. In 5 years, everybody's going to be eating this way. And then,
Right.
little by little,
Yeah.
it's picked up slow momentum, but now it's kind of like a snowball going down a hill fast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually noticed so right when the pandemic happened and everybody lost their jobs, and once we were allowed to start hiring again, I noticed all these guys with these really nice pedigrees, like people that worked at Noma and all these other places, like looking to us because it was a place where they could learn a skill that you can't learn somewhere else. Like everybody would just say, I just want to learn how to cook vegan food, and the only place you can learn how to do it really at a professional level is on the job. So it was really interesting to see that we were providing a skill set that people wanted to learn how to do.
That is interesting. But how did you learn it, and how do you learn it when there's not a real playbook? Or maybe there is a playbook, but you're in a sense writing the playbook as you go.
Yeah, I I always say, and it's funny, like Anthony Bourdain was my best teacher,
Yeah.
because I wanted to learn. Like, if you, I have a pretty big cookbook collection, and if you look at most of them, I would say maybe only 5% of them are vegan, because I wanted to learn from people like Sean Brock and Mark Vetri and
Uh-huh.
all those guys that are doing it, so I could learn how they're doing it and then use those techniques and apply it to what we do.
Right.
So uh, to me, that felt like that was the best way of doing it. I used to watch Mind of a Chef and chef's table and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, and just taking it all in and listening to how people are doing stuff. I think that first season with Dave Chang, I learned so much just like by watching the way that he does things. And it's more of a mindset than like technique. It's just, to me, it's just like get in good ingredients and just let them breathe, don't do
Yeah.
too much with them. And we've been able to find really good local farms here in Southern California that grow good produce. So I just get it, and I don't mess with it much, and we just try to tell the story of that way. Like, we took the time to find good vegetables, so we just did a little bit to it, and here he is. Like, and it's as true of a form as it can be.
So basically, you get good ingredients, you already know how to cook, and then you kind of put the two together and create something, from that.
Yeah.
When we were, like I said, 50 years ago, I think the closest thing we had to any kind of a template or playbook was a book called The 10 Talents Cookbook. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, or if that's in
No, I
your.
haven't heard that one.
So it was put out by Seventh-day Adventists.
Okay.
That cuisine, they were the pioneers of sort of fake meat, or
Yeah.
plant-based meat. And it was out of Loma Linda, California, I think. And it was a great book. I mean, they were making cashew butters and things like that nobody else had heard of. But we had to learn. I mean, none of us, we were all a bunch of hippies who had never gone to culinary school, barely knew how to hold a
Yeah.
knife. And we were trying to change the world. And slowly it happened, even though
Yeah.
we weren't doing it ourselves. But we're all out doing other things now. And a whole new generation has taken the helm of that. Um,
Yeah, I will say that I'm kind of a forever student. So
yeah.
I'm uh I'm just always learning. I learn from all my employees. Just I Once they come in, they want to learn from me, but I also want to learn from them, because most of them are coming from an Omni background. So they're able to apply their way of doing things to what we do. And I set some boundaries, just we're somewhere in the Italian Mediterranean uh, vein of the way that we cook.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, I'm into smoking things, grilling, doing whatever we can do to bring as much flavor out of stuff as we can do. So, um, and we've set it up to where we're as fully scratch as we can be. Like, we make our own butter, we make all of our dough, we make our pasta. I just recently started working with a small dried pasta company that works out of LA.
Oh,
But because I would love to get an extruder and everything, but I don't have an extra, $10,000 or whatever to
right.
to do it all right. But we
That'll
we
be a
we
Norma Jean 2.0 down the road.
right. Yeah, I would love to do all that kind of stuff. But it's, like you said, like writing your own playbook. I mean, we kind of have with, we developed our own cheeses, we developed our own butter. We have fermentation. We make all of our own preserved lemons, all of our hot sauce, anything that we can do. I have another separate business partner that's a business that we started that's tied to Donna Jean, but it's separate, called Scratch House, that we started making our own cheese, and then we moved it into this commissary kitchen thing.
Uh,
So it's kind of expanded past just making mozzarella for the restaurant into a couple other different things. So we make our own Parmesan, we make our own mozzarella, we make a couple different other kinds of hard cheeses, goat cheese, and it's either white bean or potato starch or cashew based. So that's been a whole project that it's beyond my scope of how to do it. My partner is like the scientist behind all this stuff, and I say, hey, I want this, and he's like, no problem, I'll figure it out.
so does Scratch House serve as the commissary, so to speak, for Donna Jean?
Yeah, for our cheeses and our fermentation projects. Now, it was all stuff that started in the restaurant, but we grew it to this separate thing to
Uh,
kind of build it as a small retail arm, but also take some of that heavy prep out of our kitchen and move it into another kitchen. So now he's servicing both Donna Jean's, and he's doing a couple other smaller restaurants, got a couple small grocery stores and that kind of stuff. So it's been a really cool project, and it's fun to see how it's evolved from the first day of putting a pizza on the menu with our own cheese and what that was to what it is now.
well, I want to get into. I know you have a nice array of pizzas on the menu aside from other things, and I want to get into that. But maybe we'll talk about that in part two and segment two today. But since you mentioned mozzarella cheese. Let's talk about cheese for a while, because I think that's one of those sort of mystery areas for people who are not vegan or
Yeah.
oriented in vegan stuff. How do you create cheeses like mozzarella? And you mentioned cashew. Is cashew sort of the best base nut for that, and why cashews?
I think so. I mean, well, that's I've heard somebody say it's like vegan fatty gold, right? It's just you're just taking one kind of like fat and protein source and molding it into what you want it to be. So the way that they do it at Scratch House is he uses as many traditional cheese making processes as he can to take those cashews, or now white beans, and turn it into a product that's very impressive. A lot of people won't even know if we don't tell them that it's plant based.
Is it kind of similar to making tofu then? You have to make a milk and then curd the milk and then
I don't know that he curds it so much. For our mozzarella, it's kind of like a cookout process because he uses some tapioca starch, some coconut oil, a couple other things to kind of make it into a not necessarily a paste, but it turns into this like very like I said, I watch all these shows and watch people how they make it, and it kind of turns into that kind of pulley kind of thing.
uh-huh.
And the coconut oil will help it with the spread and the melt when it's cooking, because coconut oil stays solid when it's cold, and as soon
Yeah.
as it gets hot, it just spreads it out and just kind of gets that like melt and that pull on it a little bit. So it's been, like I said, it's been really impressive to watch him kind of figure it out from the humble beginnings to where it is now.
It is interesting. Is cashew? Well, first of all, I did have this one question about cashews. Do you have to cook the cashews, like roast the cashews first, or do you use them in the raw state?
You use them from raw, yeah, yeah.
And
Everything is used from raw cashews.
so you kind of treat it like it's a bean. The cashew is
Yeah,
kind of like the bean, and
yeah.
from the bean you start the process. And so how do you turn like a cashew, we'll say a mozzarella cheese, how does it become a Swiss cheese or a cheddar cheese? And how do you develop those other flavors?
Well, so he's been trying to find as many non-dairy derivative uh, uh, cultures to use that. So he'll take a culture and add it into whatever process he's making. Some of them were great, some of them were absolutely awful, but it
Uh,
was just like this trial and error.
uh-huh.
I remember he was trying to make this blue cheese once, and it was the worst thing I've ever tasted. I was like, Tony, throw that away. This is bad. But we had to try it.
Yeah, of course. So
So
basically it's
it,
fermented. You're fermenting the bean
yeah,
custard or
and he
paste that you
does,
made.
and he'll do. I think the Parmesan, he will age it for at least 2 weeks. And the goat cheese, same way. He'll do like we've had one set up to a year, and it's still really nice. He develops the right environments to let them age and do the things that they're supposed to do, so they culture the right way and everything. So he's really into it. It's been really, like I said, it's been really fun to watch him kind of figure it all out, at least on the cheese side of things.
I know that there's some nice products out in the marketplace. We get Kite Hill uh
Hmm.
cheese products, uh and I don't know if the process is the same if everybody has their own proprietary sort of technique for how to do it. It sounds like you've created your own in-house version for how you're making your cheeses. It's not out of some generic cookbook that everybody's using.
Yeah, that one for sure was. I know when Tony was developing the recipes, it was reading more science journals than recipes,
Yeah.
and just like figuring it out how starches work together and how binders work and all that kind of stuff. So he spent a lot of time just reading those kind of things to just kind of create his own process, which has been super impressive for sure.
So cheese is one part of the menu, and obviously not the whole part of your menu. What are
Hmm.
some other key components to the Don and Jean menu that again becomes the base note or the foundation for building out the menu items?
So for it, like I said, we work with a lot of local farms, so I look at what they have, and so our tagline is pizza, pasta, vegetables, right? So I kind of stay within that realm. Um, as far as the pizzas go, those 6 pizzas on the menu, I know they're all home runs. Um, so I've kind of taken that Bianco mindset of like he's had the same 6 pizzas since 1980, whatever,
Right, right.
and just knows that they work, and he just goes with them. So the 6 that we have on the menu, I was like, these are great. I'm not going to mess with them too much. I think in the pasta area, I get to play a little bit more with using the seasonal ingredients, and then we try to fold in and out different just vegetable dishes. Like right now, we're doing broccolini with romesco and pickled raisins and dukkha. So that's a nice little vegetable dish, and I find out what vegetables people really go for. And right now, broccoli, people love that stuff. People love the snap peas. Once we get into summertime, fresh, like really nice fresh tomatoes will be good. Um, I yeah, just kind of love seeing what everybody does. We'll do farm tours and see what's growing. Try to go to our local markets as much as possible to see what's going on. To
So you're
try to let
constantly
that
adjusting.
the yeah, we change the menu probably at least 4 times a year, sometimes twice within the season, especially in spring and summer, because a lot of cool things come up. I've gotten it to the point where our menu is only about 18 to 20 items, so there's not a whole lot of room, but I do like to try to keep things fresh, and if there is something that one of my farms is like, hey, I have a lot of this. Do you want to use it? I'm like, yeah, let me figure it out, and I'll fold it into the menu as quickly as I can.
That's cool. So you got relationships with the farmers, which is sounds like a big part of what's going on really in the sustainable food movement is the relationship between chefs and farmers. I mean, it started back with predates Alice Waters, but Alice Waters is the face of that whole movement.
Yeah,
It
for
sounds like
sure.
you're kind of off of that tree and taking it
Yeah,
down.
I think it's a good way to do it, because like if you think of just like the plant-based movement as a whole, it's a lot of it is about reducing your footprint. So why
Mm,
would I want to pull produce from the other side of the country when
yeah.
it's all grown in my backyard anyway? And what's also been great about it is when there's like these E. coli breakouts or whatever, I'm like, I'm good. I'm getting all my produce from Escondido when like the stuff from Arizona or whatever has been affected. I'm like, don't worry about it. My romaine is cool.
Yeah, right. Well,
So I
well,
mean, our customers ask, and I'm like, yeah, we get it from the farm just up the road. Everything's good. We don't have to worry about it.
and do you try to stay what's the word, certified organic, or is organic sort of an aspiration? Is everything on the menu organically grown, or do you have to sometimes step away from that?
Um, it, so I'm not so much tied to the organic label. I just will talk to the growers, because some of those guys, they just don't want to pay for the certification because it's expensive. So they've been growing that way for a really long time. But some people live and die by that stamp. I've worked at a couple of restaurants where they would only buy organic, even if it had to come from Holland. I'm like, well, that's kind of against the whole thing, right?
You kind of, yeah,
So
it's
like
kind of
for
like
yeah,
trade-offs
yeah,
there.
for me, yeah. So for me, I would rather just talk to the people and find out how they're actually growing and being like, okay, cool, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So that's important to me. Like I'm not tied to the organic label.
Well, it sounds like number one, you've got your relationships with your farmers, so that's a big part of it. And did you have to establish new relationships when you opened the Los Angeles branch?
Yes and no. I'm actually working to get some of this stuff from the farm in San Diego to my LA location because I just really enjoy what they grow. They're
Uh,
called JR Organics. If you're interested, they're just like
yeah,
this really good
always.
little family owned farm. So just like for example, we have on our menu we have this salad called the really good salad, and their lettuce is kind of the base of it and what makes it like super to me just like super special. And it's just like all their small leafy romaine. And when I opened in LA, I couldn't. They don't deliver that far up, so I had to find another spring mix, and it's good. but it's not the same as what I was getting from JR. So now I'm going to be trucking it up myself from San Diego and taking it to the restaurants just so I can use their stuff up there too. Because the farthest they'll come up is Mar Vista, which, in LA, it might as well be another country sometimes because it takes so long to get to other parts of the town.
Well, I know there's got to be everywhere. There's good farms if you can
Mhm.
find the relationship, and if you can get to them and
Yeah.
be in relationship with them before somebody else buys up the whole field.
No, there's some great farms, from the Santa Monica Farmer Market that I've worked with in the past. But there's just something about what they do at JR that I really want to just try to utilize their stuff as much as possible.
Well, you mentioned that it's basically pizza, pasta, and vegetables is the core of your menu. It's all built around those three sort of hinge
Yeah.
points. We want to talk about pizza. Why don't we take a little break? We'll come back. We'll focus a little bit on some of the inventive pizzas that you're doing and how you do them when we come back for part two.
Hmm.
But before we break, I noticed that one of the things I saw on your menu is a porcini bolognese. I think it's called conchiglie. It's a
Yeah.
house-made pasta. Is that the conchiglie? Is that what that is? Or with
Well,
porcini
that's like,
mushrooms?
yeah. So that conchiglie we were getting from this local company called Semolina. It's a
Oh,
woman-owned pasta making company out in Pasadena. So I actually just went and toured their facility a couple weeks ago and saw how they make everything. And they actually have their pasta making room, uh, the climate of Naples. So it was like humid and whatever in
nice.
there. She's like, yeah, it's the perfect climate for making the pasta. But it was really cool to see how they do it. So my thought process was, yeah, I want to support this small company, but they're also making everything the same exact way I would make it. I just don't have the equipment to do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I started have a couple of their pastas on the menu. Their strozzopreti, the consigle, and then we started using the rigatoni on the new menu. It sounds like you have our last menu, but we just switched over to a spring menu where we have a rigatoni, we have the conchigle, we have a strozzopreti with the broccolini on it, and that's been it's kind of opened up our pasta program a little bit more.
So the thing that caught my eye was the porcini bolognese. So basically, the porcini takes the place of the beef or the meat
Yep.
with sausage. And so, does that make this a pretty expensive dish to produce? Because porcinis are not cheap.
Yeah, I mean, we're in that particular version, we were using dried porcinis and rehydrating, and then using that water as part of the stock to make it, and then folding the porcinis in there along with some cremini and a couple other things in there. But then we were, doing it up the whole way of cooking it like 4 to 8 hours, using some nice, and that one we were using white wine in it, which we get all of our wines from California as well. So just like just doing the whole thing to just try to
Yeah.
pull as much flavor out of it as possible.
Well, I'm excited to hear more about the menu and how you've, these same backstories on some of the pizzas that you do. So why don't we come back in part two? I'm with Chef Roy Elam from Donna Jean in both San Diego and now up near Sherman Oaks in the LA area. And we'll hear more about Donna Jean. We'll hear more about your pizzas in part two. Join us, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. Running two places, you must have a great crew.
Yeah, so I just try to build up the crew that I have there. Good general managers, good chefs, competent team of people that we really try to get people to be, for lack of a better term, kind of bought in on what we're doing. So just trying to make them a part of the culture as much as we can, and giving people the information they need to feel proud about what they do.
Are most of the people who work for you living a vegan lifestyle, or is it not
No,
required?
no, not a requirement. To me, like, cooks just need to be able to cook. I can teach them what we do, and like I said, I can learn from them as well. So yeah, I don't make that a requirement. I just require them once they're in the building. You're vegan for 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever. Just don't
Don't
bring any of that
don't
stuff
slip
into
a
the restaurant.
cheeseburger into your lunch pail.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's it. Because I mean, we don't want any kind of cross contamination or any of that kind of stuff. So we just, if it's a plant based kitchen, it's a plant based kitchen. You can leave your burgers at home for a couple hours. And everybody's been really respectful of that. I've never had any problems with it.
That's awesome. You mentioned in segment one when we were first talking, you mentioned the advent of like Impossible Burgers and some of the the new products that have come on the market in the last 3 to 5 years that have gotten traction. I mean, they're working. It seems like I don't know
Yeah.
how the finances are going for all those companies. This is now, especially as it's getting competitive. How do you go if you're going to put some kind of a burger on the menu? What is the way you would do a burger?
Well, we're actually pretty opposed to using mock meats in the restaurant, so I don't use
Uh,
anything. So if I was going to do a burger, we would make it from probably like tempeh or something like that. There's a really good local San Diego tempeh company that I've been using. So we would kind of make more, go back to the old school veggie burger route,
yeah.
and leave all those weird meat analogs to the other people. I personally don't have anything against them. I just don't want them to be on our menu. I think that's kind of what sets us apart in the plant-based space, because everybody just opens a burger place or a taco place or a burrito place or whatever. So for us to just be focused on whole vegetables, I think that it just it's the way that I like to cook, and I think it sets us apart from the rest of the vegan restaurants that are chasing those big meat flavors.
And tempeh works because of it has a texture that you like, or is it because it can absorb the flavors that you kind of can imbue into it?
It's a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean it's got the texture. It's also really, from a kind of a health standpoint, it's almost like a perfect protein because of the way that the fermentation works. And so the guy I buy from, he actually doesn't do it with soybeans. He'll use mung beans or garbanzo beans or black
Really?
beans.
Oh,
So
that's
it's a soy-free product, which is really cool. But he'll use all the same ways of inoculating it and doing all that kind of stuff, but he just doesn't use soybeans, which is pretty
why
cool.
is soybean alternatives a good idea? What's the problem with soy?
Some people just look down on soy because there's it's hard to get a non-GMO soybean,
Oh,
at this point. So he's able to go around that by using other products. It's
that's
just
interesting.
one of those like things that just get a bad rap, soy. And so it's a good protein source. But yeah, for him, he'd rather use other beans. And I've had one of my favorite ones that he ever made was from split peas, and it was the closest that I saw to an actual soy based tempeh that he made. But they've all been super great. Right now, we're currently using the black bean and mung bean one, and we
Uh-huh.
use that in on our menu right now, and it's great.
Well, that's very interesting. That's a whole world unto itself, and
It really
I
is.
think I think tempeh is a very underappreciated food
Yeah, for
product,
sure.
in the American marketplace. I mean, is it originally from Indonesia or Malaysia? It's Indonesian, isn't it, or in
I
origin?
I don't
Where
know, but
Wherever it is,
probably
I
somewhere.
I taught a course at Johnson and Wales a couple of years ago on food and culture, and one of the reports that a student did was on tempeh.
Yeah,
And I think if my recollection was that it originated, I think, in Indonesia, and it's basically the primary protein source of food for that entire population. And so I'm thinking, wow, if it can work for a whole nation of people, and we see it pop up here and there. I mean, it's been around since I had my restaurant 50 years ago. We knew about tempeh, but it
yeah,
was so hard to get people to try it and buy into
yeah,
the idea of it. I mean, it looks weird. It's got this kind of white mold around. It's almost like a camembert or brie cheese on the outside.
yeah,
But yet,
yep,
your restaurant, I think one of the things I'm seeing as a theme in your restaurant is a real passion for fermentation, that you're doing a lot of fermented based foods. And can
yeah.
you talk a little bit about fermentation in terms of your development of flavor?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just it. Is that it develops flavors in a way that you just can't get any other way. Our biggest fermentation project is our hot sauce. So we just
Oh,
we get Fresnos in, and we just salt them and let them sit for at least 2 months,
wow.
and then just blend that with white vinegar and salt, and that's it. And it's just like this wonderful flavor that you can't get any other way. Like it really just take time. And I think that's why I love the art of making pizza so much, is that time is an ingredient. you know. So we try to use time and temperature and all those things in the right ways, because all these things like that hot sauce is only three ingredients, but it's so simple. But if you let it sit for a long time, it's just going to enhance that flavor. It's just all about patience, really, and
Yeah.
just letting things happen in its own time. And for us, really, it's just having the space to do it, and that's why that commissary kitchen has been great. You can just put up like 10 gallons or 20 gallons or whatever of it. Same with our preserved lemons and stuff. Again, it's just salt and lemons, and just let it do its thing. And we use that as a flavor source quite a bit too. I love preserved lemons so much.
Interesting. My wife is a big, it's one of her favorite things is preserved lemons, but um,
Yeah,
again, it's for many Americans for sure, it's an acquired taste. And I think part of your job, I think also is probably educational. You've got to help bring people along and make the transition from the foods they're familiar with to these umami rich fermented
yeah.
baked, products.
Yeah, we definitely see what we do as kind of an educational source. Our customers are always happy to be there, but they also have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And our servers we make sure they have the information they need to answer questions. And if they can't answer the question, they just come back to the kitchen and somebody there can answer the question for them. So yeah, I mean, like I said, we try to keep it pretty simple. Pizza, pasta, vegetables doesn't need a whole lot of explanation, but
Right.
sometimes the ingredients do, or a lot of people want to know about the processes and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which is also again why I started teaching classes, because I wanted to teach people some of these things that it was just hard fought knowledge for me, but now I'm just like, yeah, let me just share it to everybody else.
Well, that's cool. Well, let's talk about the pizzas then, because
Yeah.
that's how big of a part of your sort of revenue stream is the pizzas versus the pastas and the other dishes on the menu.
And pizza's the number one seller for us at this point. Yeah, we um do quite a bit. We have a small in San Diego, we have a pretty small oven. It's only like a 36-inch deck. It's two
Yeah.
decks, but we just crank as many out of there as possible. I think top temperature on that guy, if before we actually start throwing stuff in there, it's between 650 and 700.
Uh,
So we just kind of work within. I tooled our dough to that temperature and to that oven, to get the kind of pizza that I want out of it. And our one in San Diego, sorry, the one in Sherman Oaks, is basically just a bigger version of that. We have a Y602 up in Sherman Oaks, and then the one we have in San Diego, it's so old that I have no idea. Like, there's no nameplate or anything on it. Whenever I have people come and try to fix it, they bring a couple of parts. It's like, well, it could be this one or it could be this one. We
right,
don't know
right.
yet.
All part again, the mystery grows.
Yeah.
So a pizza is typically if someone orders the pizza on the menu, are there different sizes, or is it one size? Is it like a 12-inch pizza or what?
Yeah, we just do 12-inch. Again, it helps because our oven is kind of smaller. If I try to throw a 16-inch pizza in there, we're only going to get one or two at a time.
What about so let's start with the dough then.
Yeah.
Clearly, dough already is plant-based. It doesn't require any substitutions out. But what's your fermentation process for that?
So we do a short table bulk fermentation, um, about an hour and a half or so, and then
Mhm.
the rest of it all happens cold. So we do up to 5 to 6 days cold
Really?
fermentation.
Oh,
Yeah, so just controlling time and temperature. So we make sure that we're temping the water to about 60 degrees, so we get that good 72 to 78-degree final dough temp. And
uh-huh.
then we portion it and just put it right into the fridge, and hold it that way until we're ready to use it. And I've been really happy with that. We've gone through a bunch of different processes. I used to do like an 8 to 10 hour bulk fermentation at room temperature, but that stuff kind of gets a little wild after a while. So
Right, right.
I wanted to control it a little bit more.
Yeah, if you're spreading it out over 4 to 5 or 6 days, then there's no need to wait to ball it up. But
Yeah.
what kind of flour do you use?
Right now, I'm using a mixture of the King Arthur, Sir Galahad, and the Central Milling Type 85. It's an
Oh,
80
interesting.
20.
So you're
Yeah,
making your
80
own blend.
20. Yeah, so I just recently got the book Joy of Pizza, and that one, I used to do a 75-25 split of the bread flour to the high extraction wheat flour, but I just made that slight adjustment to 80-20 after reading the Dan Richter book, and
Yeah.
it's great. I love it. And I've ever since we started making pizza, I always put some sort of whole grain in there. I used to use spelt. I was using rye for a while, but the Type 85 has always kind of been a part of what we do. And
Right.
now it was just a ratio thing. I've even made fully Type 85 pizza, which is really good, but it's
Yeah.
a hard sell to the public. So it's
A little
weird
more
to me now
earthy.
when yeah, it's weird to me when I go and see an all white flour pizza now. It just looks really odd to me because I'm so used to having all those
Yeah.
speckles and everything in there.
A little bit of that earth tone in there. I think
Hmm.
it also stays truer to the theme of your restaurant.
Yeah.
You're using, when you mentioned Dan Richards' book, he's working primarily with natural sourdough fermentation. Is that what you're doing as well?
No, we mess with a little bit of sourdough stuff, but for me, the consistency of it, I used to use fresh yeast, but I've moved on to instant yeast,
And yeast,
and
yeah.
I I was against it for a while, and I think what I was reading in what's his name, Bedia,
Joe
from
Badia, yeah.
yeah, Joe Badia. He's like ADY whatever, and I just started messing with it, and I started using the instant yeast instead. And I was like, man, nobody's gonna know the difference. Like it's just in my head, really. Like for the
Right.
difference between dry yeast and fresh yeast, like I'm the only one that's gonna be able to tell the difference at the end of the day. So even and we only use 1 gram of yeast per every 1,000 grams of flour. So we're
Wow.
using a very small amount. We don't add any
Wow.
sugar to the dough. It's
That's
just
incredible.
we want everything to happen slow, So again, it's time, temperature, letting the yeast eat the sugar and the flour, not adding any sugar to it, so we can really slow everything
Yeah.
down. So that's just been a process learned over time for me, because when I started looking and learning, it was mostly like home cook recipes. So it's like 1 packet of yeast is this much, and like each packet of yeast is 7 grams. So it's everything happens in like an hour and a half or 2 hours or
Right.
whatever. So as I started playing and learning, I think the Jelena cookbook was the one that kind of set me on the lower yeast for longer amounts of time, and I just started kind of playing with that idea a little bit more.
Well, that's interesting because now you're using thyme as one of your
Hmm.
essential ingredients. And I
Yeah,
think that's one of the big breakthroughs in the pizza world of the last 10 years, let's say, is people
I think
recognizing
so.
that thyme is an ingredient and you can cut way back on the yeast. If you're doing a 5-day fermentation, then
Yeah,
cutting it down to like 1/10 of 1% yeast
yeah,
to flour is about as low. It's kissed by yeast. That's about it.
pretty much.
But I love the fact that you're stretching that out over 5 days. I can't wait to come out there and try it.
Yeah, that's also why I'm using the bread flour as opposed to the 00, because like you want a little bit more protein content, something that's a
Yeah,
little stronger, so it can last those longer days. I found that out the hard way because I was like, oh, 00, and then as I got into that fourth or fifth day, like the whole thing's just kind of breaking
that's the
down and it's
breakdown.
not
Yeah,
strong anymore.
yeah,
So yeah, just finding that right blend to get me where I want it to be.
yeah. That learning curve with between flour, yeast, fermentation, all these things. Uh, it's like you said. I think at the very beginning of our conversation, it's simple and yet it's also very complex.
Yeah, it's very difficult, but it's rewarding. I think once you get it all dialed in, you're like, I got it.
You have I don't know if the pizza menu changes seasonally as well, but one of the ones I read about was called the Widow Pizza.
Yeah, that's a
What makes it the Widow Pizza? That's a
so
scary name.
yeah, it was originally called the Black Widow because the sauce we use on it is a black garlic and smoked date puree, and it's kind of like a barbecue pizza, but it's very I don't know. It's a very unique looking pizza because it comes out and the sauce is almost completely black, and then
Wow.
we put our house made ricotta on it, some chili peppers. We make our own pickled from Fresno peppers, a little bit of red onion and kale. It's just like this really kind of stark looking pizza when it comes out to you.
Very gothic
We
sound.
yeah,
You
we
call it
actually
the
named
Goth.
it. Yeah, we named it the Black Widow at first because as we were developing the pizza, my chef at the time is now the guy that owns Scratch House, was telling you this story about how he thought there was a black widow in his garage, and it like scared him to death, and it was like, coming down from the ceiling. I was like, all right, cool, this pizza's called the Black Widow, and
It's
we shortened it to
inspired.
Widow. Yeah, but yeah, it's just inspired name. All of our pizzas now are named after some sort of like musical reference. So I shortened it to the Widow. So like that story of the Black Widow is still there, but then there's also the song called "The Widow" by this band called the Mars Volta that I really
Ah,
love, and it's kind of plays into the music theme of it as well.
that's interesting. See, now that's a reference I never would have caught because that genre has passed me by. But that's it. But I think what it points out to us is the way we connect to our food is
Yeah,
on so many different levels, and being connected to it, no matter what the way you got into that, gives it more meaning. When you're making it, when you're eating it, when you're thinking about it. Tell us
yeah.
the backstory on Thunder Kiss, on the Thunder Kiss 65.
Yeah, so that one is our white pizza. So White Pizza, Thunderkiss 65 is a song from a band called White Zombie. So I was just like kind of 6 degrees of separation
Where have
there,
I been all these years? I'm missing all these bands.
Yeah. But that one is slightly inspired by Bianco. That's where the pistachios came on the pizza.
Uh-huh.
But then we use a white wine garlic cream sauce. That one's cashew based as our base. And then think of it kind of as like a white wine bechamel kind of situation that goes on the
Uh-huh.
pizza, and that reduces in the oven with our mozzarella, ricotta, and a little bit of spinach. And then when it comes out, we get this really nice local lemon infused olive oil, and that goes on top as the finisher. And that's a good one.
That
I
sounds
that
fantastic.
one's been on the menu for quite some time.
That's actually sounds really exciting to me. I'm on a white pizza kick right now myself,
Yeah.
and a little bit of a uh, tarte flambe kind of feeling to it as
Uh,
well. But so that's when I come out there, that's definitely what I'm going to want if it stays on the menu. Do you keep those on?
no, those now the six that are on there are pretty much the standard. So if I add anything, it'll be extra on top of those. So like if we decide to want to do a seasonal pizza or something, that it'll just be in addition to those, because those are like the Widow, for example. It's one of those that kind of became a cult following kind of thing. So when
Uh-huh.
I'd be like, I'm just going to take this one off the menu, and I would take it off and people would get mad. So I was like, all right, I'll put it back on. And now I'm just like, you know what? It's just going to stay. It's become this very unique pizza to us. So like, I can't think of any other place that has something that's like that pizza. So it just stays there.
Yeah, I mean that one it's got to be now it'll be an instant classic basically for you guys. Tell us about a couple others that I don't know about
So
that are
yeah, so the
out there.
Bronx pizza that's on there, it's like kind of a tribute to just like the New York style cheese pizza. The
Yeah.
Bronx is also a name of a band that I like, so it was kind of like a
Uh,
two pronged situation there. But I just wanted a kind of a blank canvas pizza. Again, this is also inspired kind of by looking at Joe Badia's menu, because he's just got that one big, just tomato and cheese pie. So it gives room for people to add a few toppings to it if they want. We don't do a build your own, but I have a spot on there, like if you want to add a couple toppings or whatever. So it kind of gives people a blank canvas for that. Then the Killer Queen is just like an amped up margarita. So
uh-huh.
we add the chilies to that, our Parmesan, a little bit of oregano. And then the Four Horsemen is kind of our four cheese pizza. So we use uh, two different kinds. I got the idea of the hard and soft mozzarella from DeFara, because he does
Uh-huh.
that whole thing. So Tony makes a shredded mozzarella, and then we also have like a more liquid whipped mozzarella. So it gives two different kinds of textures on the pizza.
Uh-huh.
So we
So
were
your
able to kind of
mozzarella,
play
let me
with
just
those.
stop there on the mozzarella. Does your mozzarella kind of perform like milk mozzarella? Does it have this the pull and the sort of that stretch quality?
If you're looking at it to like kind of be able to pick it up and have this foot long string or whatever thing, it doesn't really do that, but it's got like a very similar mouth feel. It,
Uh-huh.
it it kind of fills in all those gaps of what you would be looking for a cheese for sure.
Okay, so but we're not, it's a bridge too far to expect it to be able to stretch out into a
Yeah, for
sexy
sure.
little thread of cheese. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's right. Well, we go for flavor. That's more
Yeah.
important right now. Any tell us about one more pizza on the menu, and then
Just trying to think of
let people
what
just get
I
in their car and come out there.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think if I missed any of them there. the Fungazi. So that's just like our mushroom pizza. So Fungazi, there's a band called Fugazi, which I love from
Yeah,
the 90s hardcore scene.
I
But that
remember
one
that.
we tried to make a super mushroom pizza. So that's why it's got roasted mushrooms and it's also got duxelle on it. So it's just like a
Oh,
reduced kind of mushroom flavor bomb with shallots and white wine and all that kind of stuff on there. So I love that pizza.
that's a
That one's
mushrooms to the
actually
max. Yeah.
yeah. So that we're probably on like the third or fourth variation of that pizza, and I'm really happy where it is now. So
Yeah, I would think that, your restaurant, it'd be essential to have a mushroom pizza,
yeah, for
a
sure.
fungi
So there's
that's,
always been some sort of variety of a mushroom pizza on there, but I'm really happy where this one is now for sure.
well, we spoke briefly about the pastas in the last segment, but since we have a couple minutes left, just to whet our appetites, tell us about one other. I think you mentioned one called the Storchapreti, or do you have another one or a new seasonal one
The,
that you want to kind of
but
tout?
well, the Sorzapreti one is kind of new. It's just a cream sauce, the same white wine garlic cream that we use on the Thunder Kiss, um, and broccoli, and that's just a really familiar dish to a lot of people. So it's just like a white wine garlic cream and broccoli situation, or white wine cream and broccoli. And then we also use the preserved lemons in that to kind of amp up I love getting citrus into things. I just think
Yeah.
it brightens stuff up really well. I mean, it also really reminds me of this dish that I used to eat when I was in St. Louis, pre-vegan. I was vegetarian at the time, but there's this little Italian restaurant on the hill, which is the Italian district that we used to live in, called Cunetto's House of Pasta. And my wife used to just get it. It was just pasta con broccoli, is what it was. So we would get that all the time and just leave the pancetta out of it because we didn't want the ham.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like really really reminiscent of that dish. Our other big one is our lasagna. So we make
Mm.
the handmade lasagna sheets, and we just layer it with our mozzarella, ricotta, roasted mushrooms, and then we put the tempeh in there, and we spice it like a fennel sausage, basically,
Uh-huh.
and
Nice.
just layer that out. And the best compliment I ever got about the lasagna is they say it tastes like grandma made it or something. I'm like, okay, perfect. That's the
That's
best
good.
one.
That's
But
it.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's one of those dishes like we'll do it for weddings, we do it for catering events. It's just like one of those instant gratifying. You don't know that it's vegan kind of thing. People will gravitate to that pretty easily.
Is it on the menu though? The daily menu at the restaurant?
Yeah, it's become a pretty much a staple on the menu for sure.
Well, well, it sounds like you're having a lot of fun. Number one, creating these dishes and being inventive, playing with flavors, playing with textures, and it sounds like the fact that you've opened a second Donna Jean, then I guess it's working. People are finding you.
Yeah, we've been really blessed with people really being into what we're doing and just enjoying it. We have a pretty strong and a happy customer base.
That's awesome. Well, for people who want to find you and meet you personally, are there certain days when you're in LA and certain days when you're in San Diego?
Yeah, I tend to be up in LA on Thursdays and sometimes Saturday, and then the rest of the time I'm down in San Diego.
And one final question is, do you have if they want to just follow you on Instagram, do you have an Instagram handle
Yeah, for the restaurant, it's at Donna Jean Official.
at Donna Jean
Official.
official, like
Yep.
the word official,
Yeah, and we
Donna
we
Jean
and we do
official.
both restaurants on the same page. So
Okay, so just you can follow the story, the journey there with
mhm.
Chef Roy Elam. Is it just called Donna Jean? Is it Donna Jean Cafe or
No,
Donna Jean
just Donna Jean. Yeah.
Ristorante? Just Donna
No,
Jean.
just Donna Jean. Yeah, we try to make it comfortable and not stuffy. I want everybody to come in and enjoy the place and not feel like it's out of their reach.
You mentioned earlier that that's named after, is it your mother or your grandmother?
My mom, yeah.
Your mom. But the name Donna Jean, I mean, there's got to be a song. There's got to be a Donna Jean song to go with this.
It's funny that every time when you Google Donna Jean, all this Grateful Dead stuff comes up because I guess she was a member of the Grateful Dead or one of the
Oh,
Donna Jean something or other.
okay.
So yeah, I guess you could pull in the Grateful Dead if you want. I guess
It sounds like there should be a Buddy Holly song called Donna Jean.
right.
Well, Roy, it's been great talking with you, and I can't wait to come back out to the West Coast and taste your food because it
Yeah, it'd
sounds
be great to
awesome.
great to meet you in person.
Well, we will look forward to it. And for those of you who are listening or watching, Donna Jean, Los Angeles, San Diego, hopefully, maybe I'll see you there one of these days. But get
Yeah.
over if you can. And thanks for joining us on Pizza Quest. And we'll see you on the next episode.